and welcome to AACUC's Commitment to Change, Credit Unions Unite Against Racism. As you know, AACUC keeps its eyes and ears on the pulse of what's happening in our communities and how it affects our membership. Today is no different. We then bring it to you. So today, we have an all-star panel at hand. We're going to be speaking about Justice Climate, the Justice Climate Fund. We have all heard of global warming. We all see the effects of global warming. Our panel today is going to help us navigate what the credit union and credit union partners are doing and can do. We want you to be engaged in this conversation because it affects each and every one of us and how we can help our membership. That is what we do. And so without further ado, I want to introduce this all-star panel because they have their fingers on the pulse and they're going to be the ones who bring the change to our credit unions and to our communities. We first have up Kathy Mann. Kathy Mann is the president and the CEO of Inclusive. It is a national network of credit unions devoted to promoting financial inclusion and equity by expanding access to capital in low income and communities of color. Ms. Mann previously led the New York City Office of Financial Empowerment, the first municipal office in the nation. She was a founding director of the Asset Funders Network and worked as a consultant for leading foundations, community development, and cooperative organizations in the US and abroad. She formerly served as a researcher and facilitator for the Aspen Institute, Annie E. Casey Foundation, and numerous credit unions and CDFIs. She served as the Director of Policy and Program Development at the National Federation. Kathy has been involved with credit unions for more than 20 years, serving as treasurer of the Lower East Side People's Federal Credit Union in Manhattan and president of the Transfiguration Parish Federal Credit Union in Brooklyn, New York. Everybody, let's give some hearts and claps for Kathy. And then we have Linwood Long Sr. He is the president and CEO of the African American Alliance of CDFI CEOs, the Alliance as it's known, a coalition of Black CEOs of community development financial institution loan funds, credit unions, and venture capital funds representing all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Linwood has more than 3 decades of experience in community economic development, human resources, and business management, including leadership positions in a variety of organizations, statewide economic and community development agencies, national consulting firms, and nonprofit organizations. As president and CEO of the Alliance, Linwood's work is deeply rooted in building capacity, fostering collaboration, and advocating for policies that strengthen Black-led CDFIs and the communities they serve. So come on, let's give it up for Mr. Linwood Long as well. And then to round out this heavy hitting panel, we have Jonathan Morgenstein. He has worked at the National Renewable Energy Lab, currently focusing on the confluence of renewable energy finance and energy justice. Jonathan leads the NREL's efforts at building collaborative partnerships with state and local governments across the Mid-Atlantic, particularly to address under-resourced communities' efforts to attain equitable, clean energy access. So that is our panel for today. Now, I tell you, if anybody can get this climate under control, it is this group right here. All right. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to dive right in. And so, Mr. Long, I will ask you the first question. You launched the Justice Climate Fund at Inclusive's conference. Can you share an overview of that fund and the Community Builders Coalition that pulled it together?
Good. Thank you so much. First, for your enthusiasm. It's contagious. let me correct you on one thing. We did this, the Justice Climate Fund. Kathy was gracious enough to allow us to share the stage to announce what we thought was a very impactful and historic marriage of 19 BIPOC-led organizations across this nation. And the purpose of the fund is really to be the vehicle through which members who have loan funds primarily could access capital from EPA. And I must confess that when you look at green in the green lending space, that the credit union movement was out front. I was I tell often, I'm sort of envious of Kathy and the work that she's done to prepare ahead of this moment, right? The consumer lending, the business lending, and in fact, she was gracious enough to get several of our members into the training at UNH. And I think when you look at the Justice Climate Fund, just think about for a moment this historic once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that these BIPOC-led organizations have been serving low-income and disadvantaged communities for decades. Of course, if you listen to our friend Nicole Elam of NBA, she used the word centuries. But whatever the case, that's where we've been, and that's where we are. And I do think that there is this marriage. I like Justice Climate Fund and the credit union community because there is a marriage between the objectives of the Justice Climate Fund and the credit union community, because I think it's very important. And I must confess that I sort of have a bias around community development and CDFI's credit union, because that's where I really began my work X number of years ago with the North Carolina Minority Support Center and an awesome group of Black credit unions in the state. And so every time I get a chance, when I'm in the presence of credit unions, it makes me feel like I'm at home, right? But I do think if anyone look up the Justice Climate Fund, you will be awed at what I call the potential of that vehicle to ensure capital goes to low income and disadvantaged communities. And I must say that, as I indicated in a previous conversation I had today with Greenbanks, that Justice Florida did not propel us to serve low income and disadvantaged communities, as it did not propel Community Development Credit Union. It's been already doing it, right? I use the analogy, been there, done that, right? And so what we are hoping is we'll have a blended approach, that we'll find a pathway where we can use the strength and the thinking of all of us in the coalition to make a historic statement about the Justice Climate Fund. And I think, and I'm believing that we're going to find a way to do that.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And we are looking forward to all of that.
Sure.
So Kathy, and look, Mr. Long, I'm telling you, it's hard to keep up with Kathy, okay? It's hard.
I know. Hey, look, I'm a copycat, right? So I'm always listening, writing, when she talks about what she's doing, I'm making a note. And I'm telling my staff, y'all need to catch up with Kathy.
Absolutely. We're all going to ride on her coattails, right? But we're going to do the work together. So we're going to help her lift this. And so with that, Kathy, tell us, can you share what credit unions are doing and could be doing to address climate change? How does our commitment to equity and inclusion factor into that?
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you to AACC for holding this session. And for the very kind words. And I will say, I feel like I'm sprinting to stay abreast with all of you guys and what you're all doing, because really at Inclusive, what we're trying to do is corral the amazing activity that's already going on in the space. So I'll just say, when I think about, and, forgive me for those of you who've heard this before, when I think about how we orient the work that we're doing as credit unions to addressing the climate crisis that we're all confronting, I think about it as it's not a new product, it's not a new program, it's really a lens that we put across everything that we're already doing. And so one of the things that I think is really important as we prepare ourselves to be kind of pulling together into a broader community lender community, we really bring a lot of great tools to the table. So when we think of green lending and green finance, it is everything from our small dollar loans that might go for a household to replace an old refrigerator into an energy efficient appliance, right? So being able to make that loan, but help our member to not just replace that old appliance, but be thinking about using this as a moment to get the most energy efficient appliance into the home, thinking about all of your appliances in your homes and being able to kind of shift them over to be energy efficient. It does a couple of great things. It not only is helpful for the climate, it also reduces that monthly utility bill. So it's everything from starting off with what we, our basic consumer loans for appliances in the home to retrofits of the home, right? Trying to think about, better windows, better insulation in the attics, better, using heat pumps rather than HVAC units, and sort of upgrading the sort of the home itself to be more energy efficient, and then ultimately helping the household to think about things like solar and energy generation that would be able to not just help the climate, not just reduce those monthly utility bills, but could also help the household be more sustainable and resilient when climate events happen. So we spend a lot of focus around like what it is we do anyway, and how do we help our members be thinking and preparing their own homes for being more efficient and resilient for what's to come. It also includes electric vehicle lending. It includes commercial real estate lending. The very same retrofits we're thinking about in a 1 to 4 family building, we could be thinking about with commercial properties in our communities. How do we help businesses be more efficient, upgrade their own structures, and even use those nice big flat roofs to be able to be generating some energy and paying into the grid in a more sustainable and climate friendly way. So kind of working all the way through it. And then a major gap we're seeing that we're really hoping to drive more credit union lending towards is there's a really strong need for contractors and installers of solar, and contractors around energy efficiency that have roots in the communities where we are lending. And so a lot of times what we hear from our members is they create great green products, but they can't get installers to come into their communities and to make loans to lower income households, to households of color, because those folks are too busy sort of chasing other consumers elsewhere. And so what we also want to really start thinking intentionally about is how do we help build the future of contractors who might be entrepreneurs of color, who might be entrepreneurs in the very communities that the credit unions are, to be able to be ready to be sort of supporting the changeover in our households and in our in our businesses. So those are kind of some of the different ways that credit unions are already active, and there's a lot of now moments and opportunities for us hanging together with the Justice Climate Fund and pulling together to think about how we kind of draw greater amounts of capital to these kinds of activities.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. I know I need some help with my energy bill because it's steadily going up, right? We all can use that help. So thank you for those tips. That's great information. Jonathan, in general, how will the EPA's Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund help traditionally disadvantaged communities?
Well, thanks, Michelle, first for having me here. It's an honor to speak with you all and to be on this panel. I can say significantly, Kathy and Lenwood already touched on a lot of those questions. And for those who don't know, I work for something called the National Renewable Energy Lab, and most people have heard of our brother and sister labs that work on nuclear energy, like Lawrence Livermore. But we are a federal Department of Energy research and development lab. So we do cutting edge research on the next great solar panel, but we also do a lot of work to support the deployment of clean energy across the country and the world. And we do so not just with Department of Energy funds, but in working with jurisdictions and nonprofits across the country. And our mission is simple. It is to accelerate the day that arrives of a carbon-free, equitable energy transition. And so we are dedicated to not just the transformation of the economy and the energy system to a clean one, but one that is done in an equitable way. And so we do a lot of work on with organizations like the EPA. And what a lot of people don't know is that this greenhouse gas reduction fund actually is kind of three parts to it. And one is looking to create sort of a national green bank capacity. And that's, they've dedicated about $14 billion, extraordinary amount of money to try and set that up. And then kind of smaller regional hub nonprofits with $6 billion to really support the community development institutions, right? The CDFIs, the credit unions that make up the AACUC and other organizations that AACUC's partner with. And then there's a program called Solar for All, which really is flowing money directly to states and municipalities, which isn't clean energy writ large, but specifically to solar, and to help states and municipalities get funds to the deployment of distributed solar. And all of these are explicitly required to comply with the Justice 40 initiative. And yes, as Lenwood said, the idea of Justice 40 of addressing these long-standing injustices, it's the Biden administration did not invent the idea, but it is an unprecedented amount of money that is now available, and it is something that we at NREL on a daily basis are trying to figure out how we can support local institutions, and whether that's a local CDFI, a local credit union, or institutions like Inclusive and AACUC in filling out and implementing plans that address the local community challenges that have been around for quite a long time. I can say that we have an extraordinary amount of technical expertise at NREL. And so we're based in Golden, Colorado, and we have offices in Alaska and Washington, DC. But so we obviously don't understand necessarily the detailed challenges faced by a low-income community in Southwest rural Georgia, or a former coal community in Wyoming, or wherever. But we like to go to those places and work with the communities that are there to match what expertise we can bring that might not be locally available to the expertise that is locally available, and together help create some of those, dynamic solutions that wouldn't otherwise be possible. And now suddenly there's funds to do that for on all sides. So yeah, I can leave it at that for the moment.
Okay, great. We'll come back. Those are some great nuggets. Mr. Long, tell us, what role do you see credit unions uniquely playing?
Well, that's a great question, but I would sort of turn that around and say, how can they expand the great work that they are doing now? And again, I hate to do this. I'm always borrowing from Kathy. And one of the things she said early on in this process, I have a pair of glasses on, right? She said, change glasses, right? Change your lens and the way you look at products. So Kathy thought I had forgotten that, but I use it all the time, even with my people, that you've been doing this great work. Great, you've been doing some great work on the consumer side, whether it would be in fact, electric cars is coming up. There's an increased manufacturing of those, even in the USA. And if electric cars are being built and begin to hit the street, you're gonna need electric charging stations, right? And guess what? They break down. They fail, and so you're gonna need people to repair those. But I think the great thing is how do you, as a credit union, begin to have this broad view of the type of lending that you can say, reduce energy, right? Reduce the requirement of fossil fuels, that you are helping families and clients and communities that you serve be a part of this great effort to reduce carbon emission, because that's the goal, right? Whether you're looking at Justice Climate Fund, whoever, credit unions, we all are part of this effort to reduce carbon emission. That's the number one goal. So you have a lot of dollars out here to do that. And so I think credit unions just need to change the glasses. If you don't change glasses, change the lens. And that is how you look at product and begin to think about ways that you can counsel clients and entrepreneurs that come in and help them to think about energy efficiency in the appliances they buy and the weatherization that they might buy, and even in solar panel. Now, I will hop on one thing that Kathy said, which I think is a great problem in many communities. When you look at solar panels and need the contractors do that, when this money hit the street, there's going to be a lot of folks out here claiming and professing to be qualified in this area. And so one of the things that we're going to have to do, and I think the credit union has, through Kathy's leadership, have done a great job in developing, again, lens. How do you look for good deals, good contractors in this area? And I think it's going to grow in that demand to make sure we find the right people who are doing this work with this great latitude of possibilities from green funding.
Thank you so much. Jonathan, you raised your hand. Yes, sir.
Yeah, if I just may reinforce this, a colleague of mine at NREL is in the process of writing a report on predatory lending in the solar industry, and she's expanding it. Originally, it was just focused on lending, but she's expanding it because, of course, there's predatory lending, but there's just as much predatory, project developers who don't know what they're doing, or even if they do, they put together very low quality, fly-by-night products, and they disappear. And as is often the case, they will target the least resourced communities because they think that's the easiest place to get away with these things. And it is a significant issue. It's a significant point of concern. And then also one more thing that Len would mention is we've done a lot of work all over the country and the world looking at ways to save communities' monies. Especially, I've worked with some low-income communities in Yucatan, Mexico, and the flashy sort of glamorous solar panel. Well, I love solar panels. I tried to start a solar company a while back. The best thing you can do to start off, the very first thing you can do is basic energy efficiency stuff that credit unions can be fantastic in providing the financing for, as Kathy was saying, whether it's a new heat pump or just insulating your windows. And we found across the country and the world a knowledge gap by consumers. I mean, even I talk to my brother all the time, and he doesn't know most of this stuff, and he's next to me, and I spout off about this stuff ad nauseum. And so I think it'd be really great for the credit union industry to work with the Justice Climate Fund to become smarter on these issues, so that someone comes to them and says, I'd love to get financing for this clean energy technology. And then that credit union can say, that's great. Let's talk not just about that, but also these other opportunities to save you money, to clean your air, and make life better for you or your business, because we can wrap all of that in, along with these federal benefits that came through the Inflation Reduction Act that are actually flat out tax credits that can cover, depending on the person, literally 60–80% of the cost of the actual product. I'm gonna stop talking now.
No, great information. Thank you so much. So since we're talking about the funding, and Jonathan, just to let you know, there was a question in the chat asking about when that paper is going to be released. So you may want to take a look at that. Kathy, if you will, EPA has released the notices of funding opportunities for 3 different competitions for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. What is included in those funding notices? Can credit unions apply? And what should credit unions be doing to take advantage of this moment to prepare themselves and their communities for climate change? Now, I know that was a whole lot in that sentence, so if you want me to repeat it, I'm happy to do so.
No, that's perfect, Michelle. And I'll love to sort of dig into that, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, because that has gotten a lot of attention and there are a lot of questions around it. Before I do, I will say I did do a shameless plug in the chat with a link to that solar finance training program that that Inclusive has put together with the University of New Hampshire's Carsey School of Public Policy. And the reason I did is some of the very things that both Lenwood and Jonathan spoke to around how you all as lenders can also help your members be vetting some of and working their way through kind of who are trusted and vetted contractors and installers in your communities. And there's a whole section of the consumer course that talks about kind of how you can get kind of plugged in locally to see where that is. And I could see some folks in the chat were also giving some ideas on that. So check it out. We have classes running, multiple times throughout the year. So if you don't catch it for this next one, there's going to be, there's 3 or 4 opportunities each year. But I will say now, turning to the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and to your question, Michelle, the EPA released the notice for funding opportunity, or the NOFO, for 3 different competitions under the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. So in the Inflation Reduction Act, the Congress passed, and it was signed into law, that a $27 billion fund to be set up at EPA, $27 billion to be set up at EPA to help to advance strategies around financing climate-related activities and reducing greenhouse gas emissions with a very strong focus on climate equity. And that big fund of $27 billion is separated into 3 separate competitions. The first that came out has an application date in September, and it is called Solar for All, and that is about $7 billion that is targeted really to state and local government and Native American tribal governments, with some nonprofits also able to apply. And the thinking there is that's really for in cases where the state and local government might be hostile to climate action. There's opportunities for nonprofits to sort of pull together kind of comprehensive applications. And that $7 billion competition is open with as I said, an application deadline in September. And then there was the remaining 2 competitions. There is what is called the CCIA, or Community Clean Investment Accelerator, or Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, which has about $6 billion anticipated, and the NCIF, the National Clean Investment Fund, which is anticipating about $14 billion. And those 2 competitions are really intended to kind of work together. And the goal of the accelerator is to work with, they're going to make a handful of awards, between 2 and 7 awards that they're going to be making nationally, to entities that will use under the accelerator, that $6 billion competition, to use those funds to build the capacity of community lenders to be able to start and operate green lending programs. And so in early language of EPA, there was some back and forth in the comment period about what was going to be anticipated under community lenders and whether credit unions and which credit unions might be considered. This notice of funding opportunity made it crystal clear that credit unions are anticipated in that pool of community lenders. So a credit union cannot be an applicant, but it can be, but credit unions are definitely anticipated to be the recipients of investments made through the accelerator awardees. So that could be, and they anticipate awards, so there's the giant award of the $6 billion, somewhere between 2 and 7 entities will get awarded. And those entities will be building capacity, and they can be building capacity through grant funds that will go, and grant funds up to $10 million could be made available to community lenders to build their capacity. So if we sort of, as we're pulling together, there's a lot of opportunities for credit unions to be able to benefit from one or many awardees. And that's a big kind of, structure that we're hoping to see as many kind of successful applications for the field to work. The second program is that National Clean Investment Fund, and that is really anticipated to be a long-term source of capital to fuel green lending for all, for the future. And they only anticipate making 2 to 3 awards, and that's going to require sort of collaborative entities, both the clean energy, both the accelerator and the NCIF. It is anticipated that collaborations are going to be applying, and that they are going to be sort of using this first to build the field in the accelerator. And then once those lenders are successful and successfully lending, they can go to the National Clean Investment Fund awardees to be able to draw capital. So as we've been pulling together in the Justice Climate Fund, we're having a lot of conversations, and we're pulling together a lot of our strategies to make sure that the community development lending field, as represented by credit unions, loan funds, community banks are putting together the best foot forward to be able to access those dollars and make sure that our lending strategies are able to be successful. So
Right.
we've
Well,
got a lot of
Kathy,
work ahead of us in the next month or so, but we fully anticipate with Lenwood's guidance and leadership, we believe we'll be putting together a really strong application as the Justice Climate Fund.
great. Well, I was gonna say, Kathy, you're gonna be the new E.F. Hutton. When Kathy Mann speaks, everybody listens. You're talking millions and billions. We will be listening, ears to the ground. Okay. All right. So, Jonathan, can you help us out? Aside from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund financing benefits, what resources can help us access clean energy and its benefits?
Yeah, and I think, yeah, thanks for the question, Michelle. And because I think the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, as Kathy was just describing in detail, is going to provide extraordinary resources for financing. But there are other funds out there that can be matched to the financing to lower the financing requirements. If a new heat pump, a new high efficiency heat pump is going to cost you, $10,000, a low income household probably going to struggle to be able to finance the full $10,000. However, as I mentioned earlier, there has been a whole slew of tax credits, not tax deductions, but tax credits issued by the Inflation Reduction Act last year, that was signed into law last year, which depending on your income can lower the cost of a energy efficient energy efficiency product like a heat pump, like maybe a new electric stove, maybe even solar panels, by anywhere from 20 to 80% off the cost, up to a certain point. I forget, it depends on the technology, but literally you could save $14,000 off the cost of a $18,000 solar panel system or high efficiency heat pump. And then you only have to go and finance $4,000 instead of financing $18,000, because $14,000 of it will be given to you as a tax credit by the federal government. And so and that's what I was referring to earlier, where credit unions can play an extraordinary role in making potential consumers, their customers, their members, aware of these kinds of opportunities. Because again, I don't think most people, people have heard of the Inflation Reduction Act and they know there might be some benefit, but they don't understand the degree to which these are available. And especially for low-income households, for traditionally disadvantaged communities, the degree to which you can get a tax credit is proportionate to your level of income. So if you make the average income in your community, you can still get a tax credit. But if you only make, I forget the exact numbers, but something like 50% of the average income in your community, then you can get a much larger tax credit from the federal government. And so these are significant opportunities. There are the traditional low-income heating and efficiency programs, LIHEAP, which is a state-administered but federally funded program for low-income individuals everywhere in the United States, where the federal government, through a state sanctioned organization, will cover most or all of the cost of an energy efficiency upgrade. And if for heating and cooling sometimes, especially if you're in southern hotter parts of the country. So, all of these opportunities can be force multipliers and have these fantastic synergistic effects, so that not only now is there money available for low interest loans through local credit unions, but much, if not most of these clean energy systems can even be fully paid for. And so it's something to really keep in mind and use as an advantage in accelerating the deployment and support to disadvantaged communities. And one more, an item that people don't really think about it a lot is something called an induction stove, which is an extraordinarily high efficiency electric stove, and can replace a gas stove, which for especially little children can have toxic effects inside a home. And an induction stove is, well, it's pretty expensive still today, kind of like solar panels are, but with all of these benefits rolled into one, it can become affordable for even low-income customers in certain parts of the country.
Thank you. Great information. So Mr. Long, tell us, what do you think is most needed from the credit union movement now?
Thank you for that. But let me just address something that Jonathan said, which I think shows the magnitude of the problem that we have and the challenge we have, right? And again, E.F. Hutton, aka Captain Man, said months ago that one of the things we have to worry about is not putting a heavy burden, a cost burden on the backs of low income and disadvantaged citizens. And so Jonathan talks about, rolling some of these tax credit in to reduce that burden. But here's the challenge that for credit union, loan fund, and all of those who are in this work, and that is getting to know, how do we educate those who are intended to know of these benefits? And then how do we begin to factor in ways in which we can do that education? How can we use our technical assistance funds to really educate the low-income and disadvantaged community? One of my greatest fear is that we have Justice 40, we have all this going to low-income and disadvantaged community, and the fear is they're not ready and do not have access to the knowledge, right? My people perish because of lack of knowledge, and it goes beyond just knowing the funds are available, but what are the opportunities that those funds can be coupled, can be used in a way to make sure that we are effective with the number one goal, reducing carbon emissions. And so I think the challenge to your question is for all of us to learn how we educate our consumers, whether it's a consumer lender, or a business lender. We have this awesome responsibility and challenge, not only to provide them capital, but provide them information to know that they can too be in this cavalry. And I'm gonna use cavalry because it's gonna take division, battalions, and cavalry to educate our citizens about all those opportunities.
Absolutely.
So I thank Jonathan for bringing that up, but he raised a challenge, right?
Mhm. Mhm. So what do you three believe are the long-term goals of the Justice Climate Fund? And how do you plan to expand its reach and impact in the future?
Well, let me begin, and then from the Justice Climate Fund, I think the overarching goal is to be on record of marching toward this goal of reducing carbon emission by 2050, and with the net check of 2030 by 2030, somewhere 2030 or 2035 net 50. But I think the overarching goal, in addition to that, is what I call sustainability and a permanent capital source for our members, that this can be not a one and draw, but a perpetual fund that will allow us to have greater reach and greater efforts to ensure that we're not only reducing carbon emission, but we literally are creating a green economy for a lifetime in low income and disadvantaged community. If we can do that, this word transformation will have a new meaning.
I'll echo that. I think that's an amazing vision. And I think that's exactly what we hope we will build with this Justice Climate Fund. I'll also, and I'll maybe just amplify it. I go back a lot to about almost 2 years ago at the Inclusive Annual Conference in Puerto Rico. We were lucky enough to have Shalonda Baker, who is the director of the Office of Economic Impact and Diversity at the Department of Energy. And she's also, an author of an amazing book called Revolutionary Power. And I can remember sitting there, and she laid out kind of the outline of the inequities in our energy policy in the United States, and sort of showed maps of, kind of where and how that inequity plays out in the energy community. And I remember thinking to myself, like, that is the same map as redlined communities in financial services. And it's the same map that are the very same communities that have been most negatively impacted by environmental, policy and by pollution. And so it was that aha moment of like, these are all the same. This is all the same structure and challenge when we think about equity. And we kind of have this moment of possible transformation where, it's not, it's a huge amount of resources. It's certainly not all it's not all the resources that are needed to address some of these challenges, but it certainly would be an amazing first step in being able to channel capital and reverse some of those inequities, and really be using a cleaning and greening economy as the opportunity to really reverse inequities that existed in older systems. So, the idea of pairing up, capital going for greening economy in those very same communities that have been disadvantaged by energy policy, and have it be delivered through credit unions and other CDFIs who exist because of the inequities in the financial services community, we could be creating this whole new way of how we want to see resources flow. So I think the vision is a big one, and the challenges are big, but it's just an exciting moment, and I think we have some great opportunities ahead of us.
Right.
Yes, echo everything Kathy and Lenwood said. We at NREL, we are eager to partner with Justice Climate Fund. To be honest, we at NREL are not 100% clear, because we are quasi-governmental but quasi-independent. We are not 100% clear at the moment what our role is with regards to the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. But we know we cannot be a prime applicant, but we are also unclear as to the degree to which we can partner with and support some of those who are applying. But the degree to which we can, I can guarantee you that we are eager to support, whether it's the Justice Climate Fund or any of the other potential winners of those grants, including the 60 states and territories that we anticipate will be applying under the Solar for All, and bringing that kind of long expertise, not just in traditional clean energy understandings such as solar and wind and heat pumps, but different uses of hydrogen and just all sorts of amazing technologies that boggle my mind, that I'm constantly learning about working at NREL from the real scientists. But I wanted to, someone mentioned a question about the underbanked communities. And this is something that I've worked on in as I mentioned, in Mexico. There are non-traditional mechanisms for evaluating credit that have been used in different parts of the world. There are some that have sprung up in the last few years specifically for the clean energy industry. And for example, just simply, how long has a potential customer been able to repay on time their electric bills? Because if they've been paying their electric bills for the last 3 to 5 years on time every single month, chances are if they get financing in order to buy something that will lower their electric bills, they're probably a good credit. They're probably a good credit risk, or because they've already been paying off. They've already been paying off the electric bills, and if this lowers their electric bills, and the monthly payments would be less than that difference, that's probably a good bet that they'd be able to that loan would perform. And one other thing I want to note that, and this might be a little self-serving, one program I work on at NREL is called the Community Power Accelerator, as part of the National Community Solar Partnership. And a lot of people have maybe heard of the term community solar, but really don't know what it is. But it is a very powerful tool that is specifically addressed under that Solar for All program that Kathy was talking about. And it's a powerful tool, especially for multifamily housing, which is obviously very common especially in lower income communities, and for renters. And what it allows you to do is, if you do not have a roof of your own, or if, like me, you do have a roof of your own, but it's covered with trees and you don't want to cut all your trees down, you and others can aggregate your power, your monetary power, and buy together a solar system, or invest in a solar system, or buy membership in a solar system project in your community. And it's not doable in every single state, but a lot of states, a majority of states have programs that authorize it. And I'm putting a link because this platform, communitypower.energy.gov, is specifically looking for credit unions and small banks and CDFIs to become involved as a mechanism for financing. There's a matching tool to match community lenders with those seeking to do community solar. So just want to throw that out there.
Great. Thank you so much. I'll ask one more question. There's so many that we have, but time is of the essence. We're going to have to come back and do part 2 and part 3. Kathy's talking about these millions and billions, and we need to be a part of it. But I would ask you all, how does the Justice Climate Fund engage with the credit union community to promote green lending products and encourage financial institutions to invest in sustainable and equitable development?
Yeah, Kathy, well, Kathy is the pathway, right? We learn from her. I'll be honest with you, we learn a lot from her. And I do think Again, we are joined at the hip. We are inseparable about our commitment to ensure dollars flow, not only to community loan funds, but to community development credit unions, to credit unions, period, and MBAs, right, MDIs. And so we have this common feeling that for this moment, right, we worked too hard and come too far and argued too much to get to this part and say I'm gonna take my marbles and split and go home. But I do think that we have this historic moment, right, that we can show the world that loan funds and credit unions can have a systemic impact on reducing the inequities that we've seen in low income and disadvantaged communities. That's my hope, that's my optimism, and I'm sticking with it, right? AACUC has a role in this, right? Members have a role in it, and you have to stand up and be ready for this moment. Let me tell you, this will not come this way again. There are too many opposed to this idea of money going for climate change, and especially in low income and disadvantaged communities. And shame on us if we let anybody snatch this moment from us. I'm done.
Hear, hear. That's a drop the mic moment. I agree. It is, there's going to be so many different ways that we as credit unions will be able to show up and will need to show up, because it's not about the credit unions, it's about the members and the communities and the people we serve. And it is our job to get them these resources. And so, there's going to be, some of the capital is going to be a little bit prescripted by the way EPA set up the NOFO. There's in the accelerator, it's going to come in the form of grants to build the capacity of the lenders. And so there's going to be some specifics about how you can use those grant funds. You're going to need to be showing that you're, using it for the green lending. It's going to be there's going to be some work we're going to have to do with credit unions to make sure, we can build the capacity to be tracking the green lending separate from other loan products in your portfolios. So, it's not going to be like, it's going to take some changing of the way we do things and probably some system change. And the beautiful thing is there's going to be some dollars to sort of support that. So I feel like there's going to be grant dollars to kind of help us think about how do we make these loans, be intentional about the loans. In the case of the accelerator, it's anticipated that all of those grant funds are supporting community lenders to lend exclusively in Justice 40 communities, so exclusively in low and moderate income communities and communities of color. So we're going to also need to do some help on building the capacity to be tracking where those loans are going, and we've got the systems that in place to do that. On the clean investment fund side, which is really going to be the fund that's going to live on forever in the Justice Climate Fund, as we all hope, will be the successful awardee there. There's going to be a lot of different instruments that credit unions can use from that Justice Climate Fund far into the future. There's going to be ways to get like advances of capital to fuel your lending, your green and climate friendly lending. There's going to be ways to use credit enhancements to maybe help you go deeper in the credit box than your examiners want you to go, right? So to be able to show your proof of concept, there might be ways to kind of use some credit enhancements, either loan loss reserves or some form of insurance, loan insurance and guarantees. So a lot of the details have to be sort of sifted out, but there's going to be a lot of different tools and mechanisms that help you to both launch the lending and then be able to fuel the growth of your lending We're looking at, secondary markets for those credit unions that might worry, well, I can only, I can't have, I can't be over concentrated in a certain type of loan product. So I'm going to need to know that there's going to be a secondary market I can off-sell. So secondary markets, loan participation opportunities. So there's going to be a lot of different pieces of it. A lot of that we're just sort of beginning to weave together how it can all work together in tandem. But yeah, the opportunities are going to be great and the tools will be great. And I think the key thing we're going to want to do in Justice Climate Fund is make sure we're designing these opportunities to be structured enough to make sure EPA feels comfortable with them, but flexible enough so to know that the community lenders on the ground can be iterating and not sort of boxed in. So that's going to be the, the sweet spot. And I know a lot of the lenders on the call on today's meeting will have lots of great ideas and want to weigh in a lot. And so, there's a sprint to get an application in by October 12th, but I think that'll be just the beginning of kind of putting some of the bigger questions in place. Is like, how do we make it most useful so that you can create the right tool set of products for your communities?
Great.
And you know what's exciting about that is we get a chance to build it.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Well, great. You all have heard it firsthand from this all-star super panel. We thank you for joining AACUC's commitment to change. Credit Unions Unite Against Racism. So again, thank our panels. Let's give them hearts and thumbs up and love on today. We thank you so very much for coming. We hope that you have a wonderful Friday and a phenomenal weekend. And we'll see you back next month for another edition of the AACUC Commitment to Change, everybody. Have a great weekend.